Greetings, all praise the King. Welcome to Eyewitness, an eye with an eye, an unscripted source where we reason to discover truth, supporting the struggle for international justice. Today's topic of conversation is auditory symbolitry. This sounds fairly complex, but it's really simple. Basically, what we hear means something, and how we hear it affects the way that we perceive it. Now we know that, the Babylon uses symbols, and if you look at some of these conspiracy theorists videos, and maybe there's truth or not in them, but they will speak somewhat about symbolitry. And one of the things they like to say is that the evil forces use hidden symbols. Sometimes they call it the Illuminati and this kind of thing, with the one eye thing. Of course, it's meant to throw most people off, as far as every single time you see somebody put up fingers like this, or like wink or blink their eyes, that somehow they're supposed to really be secretly sending an Illuminati message. This is stupid. So again, we spoke about this, these counter narratives. The idea was to produce the truth, but make it in a way that was unbelievable. Nevertheless, there are hidden symbols, but you would be able to pick them up if you knew what it is that you're, looking for. And in this case, you're actually listening. So, a real obvious one is silence. When people hear silence, it affects them. When they're saying they're going to remember the dead, they often use silence. So there's a symbol to that. It's a symbol is that we're humbling ourselves to acknowledge or honor this person. That's what they do. If you raise your voice, people recognize that as a symbol of anger, for example, frustration. In the same way, people lower their voice. So this is not silence, but it's quietness. Now this can be effective when you're looking to get the audience to listen to what you have to say very carefully. You will lower your voice, sometimes even, whisper. These are obvious symbols. People recognize it when they say there's a moment of silence. People recognize the reason for that. People recognize when someone gets mad and starts yelling. People recognize when somebody's whispering. So they listen. It seems like there's something they're saying in the spirit. You have emotions. Now, I'm speaking about the media industrial complex, the communication channels. They are the ones that are using these mechanisms. Now, they're going to use emotions. This is done auditorily, this is done visually. Basically, if somebody's talking about an issue, it could be a Russian invasion. They're going to spark a serious tone, and they're going to talk very solemnly, type stuff. So they're not going to sound like, hey, the Russians invaded today. Hey, what's going on with that? What are we going to do about it? they're going to be, well, the Russians have invaded, they have crossed the line, this kind of thing. So, same character, but the way they've used their voice portrays, an image. Like that's what people take from it of how they're supposed to feel. Remember, we're dealing with social models here. We've recently put out a video called Social Modeling. These are characters that are paid. They're scripted. They're meant to relate to the audience. Their job is to get the audience to trust them, believe what they say. So people are going to raise and lower their voices. There's a lot of, I don't know what you call it, but ahs and ums. And now they're doing the you knows, you know. These are ways that people, this is natural for people to do when they're thinking. People are going to use this. Perhaps professional, if they're not as experienced, because over time you may get better at controlling this. But for most people, it's not easy to leave these out because they're thinking about what they're saying. And silence also has an effect on the person speaking, because it's a period of kind of awkwardness. People is waiting on you to say something. So perhaps that has something to do with it, and naturally people try to fill in that silence. However, they also do it unnaturally. So we'll call this intentional ums and ahs. Yeah, because they want the audience to think that they're thinking. A lot of times you hear them say, I think this and I think that. And you're listening to an interview that's been edited. It's not even live. This person's scripted. And that I think somebody wrote down on a piece of paper for them to say. So the symbolitry is there for people that know what it is that they're looking at. But for people that don't realize it, they really think they're talking or listening to a live person that's thinking about what they're saying. Again, the symbolitry is hidden from most people until they can see how it works. You have other noises, of course. Music's a big one. Music's used to set the tone. Sometimes what they do is they want to take something of a serious nature and belittle it and get people to not find it disconcerting. Then they use like funny music. They use kind of happy music. So depending on what kind of sound in the background is going to affect the emotions of the audience. Now there's other sounds, chimes, bells, buzzes. Some of this stuff is used to annoy people. And there could be auditory that's unable to be receptive consciously, so that people are actually hearing some kind of a noise in the background and they don't even realize it. That could be effective when somebody's speaking that the media industrial complex desires for people to not like. Birds. Birds are very effective. You know, when you see one of the so-called whatever officials standing up giving a speech outside in the, you know, what they call the rose garden, right? They got birds out there. They got birds out there because they know that sound in the background of the person speaking brings delight to the person, to the people listening. Again, this is not something that most people would think is staged. Oh, there's birds. Of course there's birds. But you best believe that they brought them birds in, one way or another. You know, by putting out food or whatever. The idea was that they were looking for that sound in the background. Baby crying. You know, if a baby's crying, it's a symbol. It's a symbol of distress. Something's wrong. We know babies cry. All babies cry. It doesn't mean that something, you know, there's a catastrophe unfolding, but it has that effect. So, for example, you could use a baby in the background, and people wouldn't realize it, but it would be causing them additional stress about what it is that's being, you know, spoken or taught. Because it is training, and at the end of the day, they're looking to manipulate the minds of the masses. Now you have certain characters that use certain voices. So this is also huge. There's a spirit in us. And the spirit is revealed by the way that we speak. And some people, you know, the real kind of disgruntled sounding folks are the ones that are used to push people away from the truth. You know, they'll use this truth, and it may only be half of the truth, but there will be some truth in there. But depending on the characters portrayed is how people will perceive it. And of course, you notice that some of these folks, they change their voice. They're going to do that depending on the circumstances. And therefore, they will get the audience to lean one way